In October 1972, the Old Christians rugby team boarded a flight from Uruguay to Chile. They were traveling for a friendly match, bringing friends and family along for what was supposed to be a celebratory weekend vacation. The celebration stopped when a navigational error sent their plane through heavy cloud cover and directly into a maze of jagged mountain peaks. The trainee co-pilot misread their position. Believing they cleared Planchon Pass, he turned north toward Santiago, initiating a descent. Instead, he steered directly into the high Andes. The plane clipped a peak, severing both wings before slamming into the snow. Out of 45 passengers, 33 survived the initial impact, but they stepped out of the wreckage wearing only t-shirts and light sweaters into a 0-degree, high-altitude wasteland. Young athletes with zero mountaineering experience were now trapped in a frozen environment entirely hostile to human life. Their first instinct was the most logical: stay put and wait. They assumed rescue teams were tracking the flight and would arrive within hours. They strictly rationed the few chocolate bars and wine bottles found in the scattered luggage. To stay hydrated, they scooped sub-zero snow directly into their mouths, draining massive amounts of core body heat just to get a few drops of water. Trying to make themselves visible, they gathered every nail polish and lipstick bottle from the luggage to paint a massive SOS on the plane's roof, but quickly ran out of makeup. They heard search planes flying directly overhead and waved frantically, but the fuselage was painted entirely white. Nestled inside a massive snowdrift, they were practically invisible from above. The search parties were looking right at them, but the mountain's natural camouflage kept them hidden. Waiting for a rescue party would only ensure they froze in place. On day 11, a passenger named Marcelo managed to wire up a broken radio receiver. Through the static, they caught a news bulletin from Chile. The search operation for the missing rugby team had been officially terminated. The group was devastated, but Marcelo gathered them and framed the broadcast as good news. He argued that knowing the search was over eliminated false hope. Getting off the mountain was now entirely their own responsibility. This chart shows exactly what they were up against. Taking action requires energy, and their bodies were shutting down. With zero food intake, the athletes were dropping from a healthy 80 kilograms down to barely 30. 2 medical students among the survivors looked at the bleak reality. At over 11,000 feet, there were no plants, no insects at all, and no animals. To sustain basic biological functions, they presented the only available calorie source: the bodies of their deceased friends preserved in the snow. The suggestion sparked horror and anger. These were their teammates and family members. But after intense discussion, they forged an extraordinary pact. Every living member gave permission to consume their body if they perished. This decision was deeply traumatic for the stranded group. They reframed an unthinkable taboo into a profound act of mutual sacrifice, driven by an absolute will to keep each other alive. Just as they established a grim survival routine, the environment struck again. On day 17, as they slept, a massive avalanche tore down the mountain, completely burying the fuselage under tons of dense snow. 8 more people suffocated under the crushing weight. The remaining 16 survivors found themselves buried alive in near total darkness. It took days of frantic, agonizing digging to punch a hole through the packed ice to reach fresh air. They selected the 3 strongest remaining men, Roberto Canessa, Nando Corrado, and Antonio Vicentin, to attempt a hike to the west. They engineered survival gear out of the plane's scraps. They ripped insulation from the cabin walls to sew a makeshift sleeping bag and strapped the cotton cushions of the passenger seats directly to their feet to serve as snow boots. A few days into the climb, their calorie burn vastly exceeded their estimates. Realizing the food wouldn't stretch for 3 people, they made a hard tactical call. Vicentin left his rations with Canessa and Parado and slid back down the mountain to the crash site. The 2 remaining men began a brutal 10-day ascent across steep, icy gradients without proper gear. When they finally crested the peak, expecting to see the green valleys of Chile, their hearts sank. Stretching before them was an endless ocean of jagged, white peaks. Pushing deeper into that frozen labyrinth was statistically a suicide mission, but they refused to abandon the 14 men waiting for them by a fuselage, so they took a breath and kept walking. On day 70, the ice finally began to yield. They reached the snowline, spotting patches of vegetation, and heard the rush of a river. Across it, they saw a local man on horseback. The roaring water drowned out their shouts. Desperate to cross the communication gap, the man on the horse threw a pen and paper wrapped around a stone across the river. Parado scribbled a message and hurled it back. The note read, "I come from a plane that fell in the mountains. I am Uruguayan. We have been walking for 10 days. That crumpled piece of paper ended a 72-day nightmare. The horsemen alerted authorities, and Canessa and Parado guided the military helicopters right back to the exact spot where their 14 friends were waiting. The survival of those 16 men in the Andes is a masterclass in human endurance. By pooling their intellect, abandoning social taboos, and pushing absolute limits, they engineered a miracle out of ice and sheer willpower.
If you value clarity over chaos, explore more on Clear Lens X.